This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Mark, welcome to Tech Talk.
Hey, Frank. Good to be here.
Mark, certainly with all of the disruption that's going on, they call it transformational. I mean, so much is happening to the average enterprise that it's no surprise that the level of sophistication, technology impact, just a whole lot of things go to what is still the fundamental overarching need of every company, and that's obviously sales. The bottom line of it is that if it doesn't save me money or make me money, what are we here to talk about? So I think let's talk about something that I think a lot of our listeners are probably curious about. Some may even be involved with it, but outsourcing sales and the difference between outsourcing sales and maybe some of the other options that are available to enterprises today.
Well, really, that's the core business of what MarketSource does. We're a sales outsourcing company, but we'd like to think we take the concept of outsourcing to another level. We customize our solutions to a customer's individual go-to-market strategy. So rather really than saying we're outsourcing sales, we like to think we're market sourcing sales, adjusting to the customer's needs. We're fortunate enough to partner with some of the most iconic and trusted brands to help them maximize their sales. So whether it's a startup or a Fortune 500, we're involved in several sectors of automotive, consumer, mobile, telecommunications, and others. And we deliver solutions across the entire ecosystem. So whether it's B2B or within the retail channels, inside or outside sales, direct or indirect, no matter the client, big or small, our brand promise is to deliver better sales. There's that negative side of outsourcing that sometimes people associate with low cost and it's faster, efficient solutions as opposed to building it themselves. And we deliver all of that and really quite a bit more, which is why we consider ourselves an alternative to outsourcing. We're a sales organization first and foremost. We're laser focused on maximizing sales and ROI for our clients. And really it comes down to the bottom line of business, and that's we generate higher revenues. We usually can impact the margin in a positive manner. We increase profits and market share. What really kind of differentiates us is that we're that sales organization that's performance-driven, a proven alternative to some of the outsourcing services that some of your listeners might be familiar with.
Well, of course, a lot of our industry, and from the standpoint of software development, a lot of aspects of the actual technical side of it have been outsourcing that type of situation forever. I guess really probably is it as common as obvious? I mean, I'm really not that familiar with it. Is there a lot of companies, and maybe go into what type of companies would consider outsourcing their sales?
It is becoming more common. Usually the pushback within the industry is some of the clients will feel that, well, if I'm outsourcing my sales, I'm giving up control. And the reality is that the way we integrate into a client's business, we allow them to focus on what they're really, really good at, and we only do one thing, and that's sell. So that's how we kind of look at that. But really the companies that are involved in a non-commodity type of product or service is where outsourcing makes sense. Something that needs to be sold as opposed to being bought. Those are the companies that should consider outsourcing. And who outsources their company? They focus on their core brand and let the company like MarketSource focus on everything else. So we'll build a world-class customer experience for them, remaining laser focused on sales, since that's all we do is just sell. And then we'll become a market expert, to kind of track the changing technologies, even possibly create a competitive advantage for them while they're going through the transformation and the disruption of omni-channel and the various channels that a client might interact with.
I'm curious, though. You mentioned that one of the challenges of a potential client might be that they'd lose control. But I would think also, what about culture? I mean, what about is it a case where are you training and working with their existing people? Do you eliminate people? How does that work in terms of how you engage a client, and what would happen to my existing sales force, or do you go after only the players that are maybe e-commerce oriented or maybe don't have a proactive sales force?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and my answer to that is going to be a bit ambiguous, and it depends. It depends upon the need of the client. We've integrated existing sales forces into our process, or we augmented existing sales forces. So, yeah, everybody understands in sales that a lot of time it's an 80-20 rule where the revenue is coming from the top 20% of your customers. So, let's say you have an outside sales force, and that outside sales force needs to concentrate on A and B customers, as an example. That would make sense. That's where the revenue is. That's where their commissions are. That's how they might be able to drive. But the reality is then those C and D customers don't get the attention that they deserve. And that's one of the ways that we can integrate with an existing sales force, where MarketSource would take those C and D customers and build them back up into A and B so that they're worth the time of the internal customer sales people. So, yeah, the challenge, and it kind of varies on the basis of the life cycle, the customer's product and services. How often do they launch? What's the speed to market? Do they need scalability where we have the advantage of being able to flex up and flex down from a headcount perspective? They can increase their market share and expand beyond new channels. It depends upon the need. We really do focus on the market that they're in, and then build a solution to what best fits their needs.
Again, I don't want to overemphasize a particular curiosity on my part, but I just think of things being so territorial and salespeople being so much personally related a lot of times to either the executive or even the company owner that it's in some cases, I'm sure you find it more often than you'd like to, and that is where people aren't doing a good job, but they have such a strong relationship with the owner or the enterprise operator that even he can't make a decision, or she can't, to eliminate them. So again, I'm not going to press the point, but it would seem to me like that a lot of, and obviously you guys do it well, because certainly all we hear about is the great stuff that MarketSource is doing, both in terms of building relationships, but equally as so performance. But again, before I'm going to make a move and call you guys in, I'm going to be a little paranoid about, what if my existing sales guys hear about it? Maybe that's a little bit too paranoid. But I've got to believe that you guys have a method or an approach that you take. If I was interested, what would that look like? Obviously, they're going to make contact with you, but is there, an initial contact and maybe a situation analysis of some kind or another, or how does that work?
Really what we have is we have a process that we call our client engagement process, and what that does is it's a part sales process and part consultative process, where we sit down and we do a direct deep dive with the client to understand the needs and what direction they're going. We ask them to invest some pretty heavy time, 3 to 4 hours in a session with us, as we go through the core business, really kind of discovering what are the pain points within that business and how can we address them. So when someone approaches MarketSource, we're in a collaborative environment here, and that is that we pull the expertise from our organization. So when we show up, we usually show up with a small army of individuals that are experts in their own way, in their own disciplines, and really dig in with the client. A lot of our clients have told us, whether they hire us or not, how much they enjoyed that process and how much they've discovered through having our internal consultants, if you will, come in and take a deep dive into their business. So that's kind of how we engage. And then it comes back to the need. What kind of customer experience are they trying to establish? What's the complexity of the sale? And whether it fits or not, or again, it has to be sold as opposed to be bought. And the reality is that the customer finds that they have more control and actually more connected, closer to the field when they engage us.
Well, with the transformational aspects of so much going on, certainly with technology and even for that matter, the entire sales cycle and the processes that are used now with some of the technologies that enhance those environments, it would seem to me that, especially with the engagement discussion that you were talking about, that anyone that is involved in this type of responsibility, or even more so a responsibility of running a company, it needs to explore outsourcing of sales, because it's obvious that in the long run, the focus on core competency and the need to stay competitive and perform in that environment with a clear, absolute focus. It seems to be, I constantly say to a lot of our clients and friends is invest in the inevitable, and it would seem to me that outsourcing is inevitable, and certainly you guys being the leader in the industry, or certainly one of the top thought leaders in the industry, that MarketSource would be the one to contact. Let's talk a little bit about maybe some of the challenges. I don't want to put you on the spot again, but maybe give us a couple of the top challenges that you guys have had to face in helping businesses to solve the problem.
Well, really, the challenges are pretty straightforward, I think, from a standpoint. And most customers, when they're in that, they understand, the clients understand that there's a need for possibly an external view or another set of eyes on the issues that might be facing in the market. But really, it kind of varies based on the life cycle stage of the company's product and where they are. Are they launching a new service? How quickly can they get that to market? We mentioned scalability and channel coverage. When you're thinking about deploying a national sales field team, there's complexities that go along with that. That's one of the things that we really pride ourselves from an analytics standpoint, where we want to make sure they're effective and they're efficient, and they produce results through the processes that we use from a territorial design standpoint. And then for established products, it's in, how can they increase market share? Sometimes 2 or 3 points of market share make a huge difference within the current channels that they're in. Yeah. Can we help them expand into new channels? Perhaps there's a vertical that they had not explored, which would be something that they'd be interested in pursuing. And then how's the brand currently represented, and is it true to their brand promise to their end customers? Is the brand lacking in the marketplace? And with all the money that's spent in marketing and building brands, that brand equity is very important. So what does that brand representation stand for? So MarketSource comes in no matter what the stage is. So if it's an emerging technology or an emerging company, or if it's an established company with established brands, and we maximize that sales and delivery. And then within that, our goal is to create an extraordinary customer experience for their end users.
Well, I mentioned earlier, and maybe I'll throw a little bit of a softball this time in a question, and that is that so much of what you guys are doing, we're getting a lot of buzz. A lot of people are talking about MarketSource, and as you've mentioned, it's relatively a new concept, although it's becoming more and more pervasive, and more companies at least are exploring the prospect, if not actually adopting some form of outsourcing. But what's been going on with MarketSource? I mean, why has it been so successful in this industry?
I think our clients, that they recognize the need to be scalable and flexible as they approach the markets. We have some iconic brands that we work with that they understand that they need to be able to connect and build that relationship with those customers, and without having to build an extraordinarily large sales team, they can do it with MarketSource and still not lose that brand equity. We take representing their brand extremely seriously. When someone engages a client, most of the time they would never know that they were being engaged by a MarketSource employee. That MarketSource emulates the brand, and we adapt that brand culture as we go through that. And it's the customer experience. It's how to grow that sales channel. Given with the rise of the Internet and the Internet of Things that are coming down the pike, there's a lot of technologies that are changing. And the reality is, like, the customer is more in control than ever before due to the fact that they're connected and the access to all the instant information that's available to them. So it really kind of changes the dynamic of sales and the challenge and the opportunity when you get in front of a customer.
Well, clearly, Mark, as we mentioned earlier, a lot of our listeners are probably somewhat familiar with it. Many, I think, are looking at it or considering it. But I think there are also a large portion that are just really getting the message. And I think you did a great job in getting that point across, because obviously in a transformational environment the way we are today, every opportunity, every possibility needs to be looked at in order to stay competitive in the field. And it would only seem obvious that the sales outsourcing and getting involved in something as as MarketSource provides. Again, you got to invest in the inevitable. It's just a reality that's going to happen sooner or later. Why not get ahead of your competition instead of chasing after it? Mark, I know you guys are hot. I know you guys are busy. I can't tell you how much we're grateful for you taking a few minutes out of, I know, a crazy busy schedule to join us for a few minutes today on Tech Talk.
Frank, I appreciate the time. Thank you very much. If any of your listeners want any additional information, they can contact us on MarketSource.com. My contact information is there as well. I'm more than welcome to have discussions with any of your listeners if they're interested in learning more.